When I first started selling, I was terrible. I liked that motivation. I wish more people would doubt me. I'd be much farther along in life. If you can handle people, you're usually set up to be very successful. If you don't ask for what you want, you'll never get it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but marketing doesn't work if you can't say yes.
Is there just one magic bullet that I can just take?
Being sexy on the front end doesn't make you any money on the back end. If you're doing a good job for people within a mile, they tell their friends that live in 2 miles. The definition of hell is the day that you die. The person you could have become meets the person you did become. You want to know how big that gap is.
I love that. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another episode of the Lift Your Shot podcast. Appreciate you all for being here. Today, we have an amazing guest. We have Ryan Hillenbrand out of Herb's Garage out there in Northern Kentucky. Has 3 shops out there. I know he's going to continue to grow and build his monopoly out there. But Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, man. It's good.
Awesome. Well, to just start it off, just kind of introduce yourself to the audience of just how you got started in the auto repair industry and then kind of the steps that it took to get to where we are today.
Sure, man. Well, my dad started the business back in '72. I pretty much grew up in the business. It was effectively my after-school program. I remember playing sports in high school and stuff. I couldn't work at the shop in the after school, so I was a produce boy for a period of time. That's a little known fact.
Oh, nice.
Best produce boy there ever was, buddy. I could stock the top shelf without a ladder. So I went to school for agricultural engineering. Honestly, had no intention in getting into the auto repair side of things. I would say honestly, my dad and I kind of had a little bit of an oil and water mixture as far as our personalities go. And just wasn't really my thing. I've never particularly been that into cars or anything like that. So went away to school, got my degree in engineering. Actually ended up coming home and working for my dad. He had a manager that had some health issues and some stuff going on. Honestly, it was kind of an easy choice to do. It was kind of familiar. So I came back and started working for him. I would say the business, that was kind of the 2000, like mid 2000s, 2007, 2008. It was a pretty tough time in industry and everywhere in the economy, but specifically in the auto repair industry. So I came back, started working for him, learned a lot of lessons, and honestly, here we are now. We've got 3 stores across the greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area. We've got a 4th store in the works. And I'm a coach consultant in the industry for Shop Fix Academy, and I just tell everybody I'm really good at what I do because I used to be really bad at what I do. So I eventually went back to school, got an MBA specifically in marketing and innovation, and I am currently pursuing a doctorate in business administration, so leadership and organization specifically. But all these things have kind of helped me along the way. So I've done pretty good at filling in where my knowledge gaps have been in my life. So
nice. I had no idea you're getting a doctorate. Where are you getting it from?
Well, I got into Vanderbilt, and I was going to
Nice.
spend a good portion of my money going to Vanderbilt for that big piece of paper my ego would love to have. But I decided to take a smart route based on some advice from a man named Dave Ramsey, and I am getting my doctorate from Columbia Southern University out of Orange Beach, Alabama.
Nice. I mean, again, it is a piece of paper, but it's still amazing accomplishment to get a doctorate.
I tell people all the time, it cost me a lot of money to still be this stupid, but it works out good.
I love that. But I mean, as we're talking, I kind of want to know a little bit more about this transition from your dad being the owner to now you being the owner, and first what that looked like, but then more so like from the employee perspective, like them getting used to like a different boss.
I still have one guy from the old guard. He's been there as long as I've been alive, so almost 40 years. He's kind of our do-it-all guy. I mean, he's where our big shop is. We're right in the middle of like farmland, suburbs, and everything. He works on a lot of our diesel stuff. Really smart guy. So, yeah, that was a really tough transition. Yeah, I mean, you got to think like, you know, it's everything you would expect. I mean, this was given to me. It wasn't earned. And to be perfectly honest with you, it was probably right. I mean, it was somewhat given to me rather than earned at a certain point in my life.
Mhm.
Once I finally took over and bought the business from my parents, I think I had earned my position. But coming in, my dad treated me probably the hardest out of any of his employees, like held me the most accountable. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm his son, right? And
Yep.
honestly, I was on the other side of the spectrum. Like, why are you so hard on me when these guys do this, this, and this? I didn't really get it. I thought I should probably have preferential treatment. I don't really feel like I ever got that. In certain circumstances, I did. I mean, my dad is not going to fire me because I'm his son. I think he would have loved to fire me about 10 times over. But yeah, I mean, it was a tough road to hoe. A big part of why I'm successful is a very unhealthy reason. I wouldn't really say that I'm successful, but by certain standards, I may well be. But the my ego was attached to proving everyone wrong. Growing up, I went to Catholic school my whole life. I at least had the perception that I was treated as the son of a mechanic and a farmer. I think going to private school, there's a lot of people there who have successful parents from a job standpoint, bankers, lawyers, that kind of stuff. And there were definitely instances where I felt like I was looked down upon. So I spent a lot of my life proving myself worthy to
Mhm.
somebody else's, for whatever reason, worthy for somebody else. Like that, it doesn't matter. But when you're a kid, what do you know, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, I just basically tried to spend all my time proving that I wasn't daddy's boy, that I was smart, that I was intelligent. It's the whole reason why I actually decided to get my doctorate a long time ago. I just wanted to have a higher degree than everybody else. Now I'm pursuing my doctorate for a different reason. I enjoy the learning process. I actually want to go back and teach. So that's the main reason why I'm pursuing my doctorate. But um, kind of going back to that, yeah, it was just all ego driven. I mean, everything was ego driven. And that's how I became a great technician working on cars because I wanted to prove that I could work on cars and I understood systems. When I first started selling, I was terrible at it. I mean, I'd have the job discounted by 30% before I ever got anybody to say no. So I just wanted to prove to myself that I could do these things. I wanted to prove to everybody else that I wasn't just given this position in life. So even though that's a very unhealthy, in the end, looking back at it, it's a very unhealthy way to live. It's actually it's a pretty typical motivator for a lot of people and just proving people wrong. So that's how I got there, man. I mean, I just every day is basically just like somebody tells me I can't do it. I mean, it's impossible for me to not try because
Yeah.
like I have that person wrong. So I like that motivation. I wish more people would doubt me. I'd be much farther along in life.
No, I love all that. We definitely relate a lot in terms of like, I mean, my dad was my coach in baseball my whole life. And I guess obviously that treatment for the coach's son is always like that fine balance of like, is he getting favorited or is he not? But it's like, if you saw the practice sessions we had just one on one, you would not think I'm ever favorited ever in your entire life because it was
Sure.
like
Hey, you and I both
we went
feel
to
that.
war.
Yeah, we both coach our kids, and
Yep.
we're definitely hard on them and stuff. And honestly, it's kind of funny you say that though. I coached youth basketball for 16 years up until I started working with Shop Fix. Something had to give. So I actually passed on that. And man, what with the transition I had from being a coach in the beginning till the end, because what I did was I just projected the way everybody treated me. Same in business.
Mhm.
I kind of used to be a guy that like lose my cool or yell or get frustrated or say something off topic. Like it's just your typical like immature leader or boss, whichever word you would want to use. And over time, I mean, I knew I had to adapt my approach. I had to get these kids to buy in. I mean, these young kids specifically have like zero confidence, and you constantly have to build their confidence to be able to get them to perform. Uh, Holy crap, was that probably the biggest lesson I've ever learned in business ever? And I had, a 16-year head start on raising my kids because there's a portion of every season where I was working with these other kids trying to get them to come up through.
Mhm.
And he realized that there's a lot of scenarios within business that it's very easy for employees to lose confidence. It's very easy for them to, I mean, it's not like they live a separate life outside of work, right? So there's all these things going on out in their life outside of the job. The job is just another portion of it. And there's a handful of people that honestly have to come to work to escape what their reality is from, to 5 to 8 or whatever, So, there's definitely a lot of scenarios in there, interpersonal communication, interpersonal relationships that really make a business successful. And I still believe that the person who's best at dealing with people and communicating is going to be the most successful business owner. It doesn't really take you understand. You can find somebody to, count pennies for you and do some of this other stuff. But if you can handle people, you're usually set up to be very successful.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that's a great segue into like another thing I want to dig into is being that right leader for people. Like how obviously that doesn't happen overnight. And so what would you say is for owners out there that struggle with their employees and they just like constantly feel like I don't know what to do but to complain about them or like I need to find someone different or whatever. Like what would you say to like what do they need to shift mindset wise?
Yeah, I mean, what a great question because I'm a visual guy, so I like to kind of like speak with like visual terms, but it's like exercise, right? If you want to grow a muscle, what do you have to do? Well, you have to exercise that muscle, and how do you do that? You do that through consistent repetition. So one of the things that I was taught that I actually pass on to a lot of people is daily collisions. So when I decided I wanted to become a better leader or just better in general, I don't know that leadership being specifically the focus, but
Yeah.
I knew I needed to get as many reps in as I could. So honestly, I had to manufacture these reps.
Hmm.
Simply going out to somebody, if you want to get better at communicating, you have to communicate more. So one of the ways I did that was I dialed in my approach to where, first thing I did every morning, once kind of all the work was dispatched, I went out and talked to the guys and you know, shot the bull and was like, hey, how's it go? How was your weekend? How was your night? You guys got anything planned for this upcoming weekend? Is everything going okay for you? Is there anything I can do? You got any problem cars that I can step in and help you with? Like just going through this full gauntlet. And it took a lot of time, and you could probably say it probably didn't allow a lot of productivity in certain circumstances, but it was important for me in my personal growth journey. And what little bit of, I don't know that I had this much forethought then, but what little bit of productivity it may have wasted, the speed of which it got me to where I needed to go was well worth the cost. So I think just simply getting the repetition in is an excellent way to kind of guide you down a communication or a leadership journey. The second thing specifically is if you don't ask for what you want, you'll never get it. And you have to really understand how specific you need to be in the asks that you give people. Oftentimes we hire people or we'll do something and we'll ask them to do a certain task. Perhaps we give them a certain key performance indicator, a KPI or a number, if you will. We're going to say, hey, these are the numbers that we expect from you. Well, they know that this is a number that they have to hit, but oftentimes they have no idea how to get there. They don't have, and we just think because we hire talented people, they're talented enough to figure these things out. I've gotten lost in that many times, even up to recently. It's a lot of explaining to the people why we do things and how we're going to get there. Those are two big parts of leadership. I would say that for me, in the military, they have a saying that you don't rise to your expectations, you fall to your training. Well, for me, management is what sets the foundation or the floor of the house. Effectively, that's the training. That's just your KPIs, the numbers, your expectations, that kind of stuff. Leadership is then what actually creates the ceiling. And the goal is to figure out how much you can how much you can expand that gap between management, which is, falling to our training, and leadership, which is rising to our expectations. And I think that those are kind of the visual things that I try to dial in on to make me think, okay, am I leading these people? If they're not performing, is it me? I think a lot of people would probably resonate with, and oftentimes I've been in a room and I say, raise your hand if you've had to fire somebody because of your poor leadership. And almost every single hand in that room comes up. And that's some personal awareness. It's actually self-awareness that, hey, I'm the common denominator here. I might have to go on a personal growth journey to be able to become a better leader for what I'm trying to do here. And, a lot of times when you see shops with a lot of turnover, it's very easy to fall into the trap and believe that, hey, I'm just not getting great people. But it's a lot harder to come to the acceptance that, hey, I may not be the leader that these people need to be able to succeed. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's plenty of people who fudge what they can do on
Yeah.
on a resume and that kind of stuff. But realistically, there's a common denominator on all of this. So we kind of got to look inside to see that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that it's reminding me a lot of the book Extreme Ownership. I don't know if you read
Yeah,
that by
Jocko's
Jocko.
book. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's a great
And
book.
just that example though, that story that he has kind of early on in the book in
Mhm.
regards to like their like different SEAL team, like different teams with the boats, and they do a race, like they call it their boat race. And there was one team that was constantly dominating, and one particular team that kept losing, and so like that leader kept getting down, feeling like, oh, it's because of my team. But then they
Mhm.
swapped the leaders of each boat, and
Mhm.
instantly that guy that was leading that one team, like yes, he was disgruntled to go to the team that was the poorest performing, but instantly they became the best one. And so it just shows like how far a leader can truly bring a team when like the only denominator that you switch is the leader themselves. So
Yeah, and I think a big caveat to that, and it's one of the reasons like I think coaching is extremely important.
mm,
I think people put too much value into coaching is basically like is it's just a classroom setting where you're just learning numbers and you're learning, this all these other things. But hey, profitability in an auto repair shop is honestly like it's a light switch. I mean, for the most part, it's a reason. You can do it a lot of different ways. You can do a strategic competitive analysis, which is something we do twice a year in January and in July. We basically call around and we get prices on certain jobs, and then we compare our prices with them and see where we're at. Find out what everybody's labor rate is. Almost at any given time, I know what the average labor rate in my area is, and then you can set a price matrix and you can set a labor rate that allows you to still be competitive and then still have a okay gross profit, right? I mean, you can figure out what your profitability is going to be from then on. What do you have? Well, usually you're trying to add cars. Okay, well that's great from a marketing standpoint. I mean, this is what it's all kind of linear. Um, but the key, the part in all that is we have to have people to be able to work on those cars. And we have to have people who are capable of serving that customer wholly and completely so that customer leaves satisfied. And I would venture to say, I mean, you probably know better than I do. 99% of customer service issues are communication breakdown. I mean,
yeah,
don't get me wrong, parts break and we screw stuff up from time to time. But 99% of the time, it's just simply somebody didn't understand value. They don't know what you're doing, or they feel like they didn't get what they should have got, or it's too
yeah, yeah.
expensive, or this or that, right? I mean, so there's some education that has to go in there. But who holds your leaders in your shop accountable, right? And this is an accountability tree that we've created in our shop. I'm still held accountable to the groups that I'm a part of. And specifically, again, shop fix has been a big part of my life, but people that are within that group, we think the same. We share the same values, the same same morality, the same Christian beliefs, different things like that. So I lean on these guys and they lean on me to help each other. I have weekly calls with each one of my managers in my stores. So I'm trying to pour into them, and I treat it just as a coaching call, basically.
Yep.
What's going on personally, what's going on in business, what do you want to talk about? It's not necessarily, my coaching calls are not, well, these are the KPIs we didn't hit. These are the ones that we need to hit. We hardly ever talk about these numbers. We just talk about goals, what they're going through. I'm pushing them to be better leaders, whether it be to have one-on-ones, whether it be to sit down and have a hard conversation, whether it be to go in and just simply pat somebody on the back and make sure that they're telling them they're doing a good job. And then my expectation is that my managers in my business are going to go forward and they're going to push that into their people and create leaders underneath of them. Just the basically stair step approach. Our
Mhm.
district manager has weekly calls with our foreman or our lead ATEX, and he basically talks to them and gets an idea on what's going on the back of the house. We then are able to communicate, put everything together, and fix a lot of problems because we're trying to facilitate as much communication with individuals as we can. We have weekly team meetings at all of my stores, the same time every week, same day. It doesn't float, and it's kind of like oh, we'll do it. I mean, and we still screwed up. I mean, we're probably one of the best communicating companies as far as auto repair goes on the planet. And there's still breakdowns in communication where things get lost or people don't want to hurt the other person's feelings or whatever it ends up being. it takes a lot of work to facilitate that level of communication, and stuff still falls through the cracks. So you can only imagine what level of chaos you have in companies that do very, very little
Yeah.
communication, minimal communicating. And it doesn't matter how much marketing or how many cars you get in there. If you can't process them efficiently, there's no marketing or anything. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but marketing doesn't work if you can't say yes, right? What good is spending money on marketing if you're going to schedule somebody 3 weeks from now? Is there a point to it? I mean,
No.
you're already 3 weeks out. Why the hell would you send, what you want to be 4 weeks out? That's cool. What's the point, right? Because the amount of attrition you're going to have from somebody that had to wait 3 to 4 weeks to get in, and then if they do get their car in, can you actually get them done in a couple of days,
Yeah.
or do they go in to another queue and have to wait? I mean, is it like not using the fast pass at Disney World? Like you just got to wait in every line, and you just show up when you show up, while all
Yeah.
these other people just keep going right into the fast lane, right? I mean,
Yep.
what does that store look like? And that's where the accountability comes in across the board for me, is I need to be held accountable just the same as my people do. So we've tried to build that into our business. And that's been a very important part of, us moving forward and being able to grow for sure.
Yeah, no, I love that. And so do you meet with, like, is there a specific leader at each store? Do you have 3 stores that you meet with, or is it the district manager over all of them and then you meet just with him? Like, what does that look
Nope. I actually handle most of the front of the house stuff, and our
like?
district
Okay.
manager who handles most of the back of the house stuff. A lot of my experience does come in front of the house, sales training, that kind of stuff. So I have a pretty good idea of what they're going through. Our district manager's got a pretty wide scope, but I think that he understands the back of the house perhaps a little more than I do from an A-level technician perspective. I was a good technician, but I was not I was not like a high A-level diagnostic foreman role.
Yep.
I was just basically like a master firefighter in a lot of sense. So he has a lot better understanding of under process and procedure, or at least that's kind of his specialty. So that's kind of where he goes in. So yeah, but I'm talking directly to the store level people, and then we're kind of solving the problems together.
Well, okay. I love that. So we've talked a little bit now about leadership, being a good leader, communication, obviously being a humongous thing. Like, setting up just a minimum of weekly team meeting is, I think, crucial. So for those of you that haven't had that set up, please set that up with your team. Like, yes, you may think, well, I'm not comfortable talking in front of my team, but you're the leader. You're the one that's moving the ship, so you need to do it. This is something that you need to suck it up, make a team meeting, and then from there, it's not going to be perfect, but just, again, do that practice, you'll be better. But then you mentioned now marketing, like that. So we set it up, all these different things, and now the team's ready to receive more cars. And now there's different ways, obviously, that marketing can be brought in. What we want to talk about today is going to be inbound versus outbound marketing. So if you want to describe for me a little bit in terms of what you consider inbound versus outbound marketing, and then we're going to dig into a little bit like the best practices of how we do these things.
Sure. So I think about the certain mediums that we generally use in auto repair specifically. Those mediums may be like a website, Facebook, mailers. You might send out vow packs. You might get a billboard, whatever those mediums may be. We understand that there's really 2 different types of marketing. Inbound marketing is people finding you when they need you. I would be remiss if I didn't go back and talk about Google Ads, but
Yep.
inbound marketing is people finding you when they need you. So what does that look like? Well, a Google ad would be somebody searching for you when their car breaks down and they would find you. So Google Ads would be a form of inbound marketing. I like to think of 1/3 of mailers as inbound marketing. Effectively, 1/3 of the people that you send that mailer to might actually need an oil change at that period of time. And so you're actually sending it to them. They need it, so they're going to come in. The other people may put it away for a rainy day or the next time they need something. Otherwise, outbound marketing is more of like overall brand advertising. It's getting your name out there. A billboard would likely be outbound marketing. Facebook ads would be keeping yourself in front of people, outbound marketing. The other 2/3 of that mailer. It's basically branding that you're getting in the mail. So you kind of have to look at it and you have to go, okay, well, now I understand what the difference between inbound and outbound marketing is. Inbound marketing is going to get you more conversions, but you're also going to pay more. Brand marketing, brand advertising is generally speaking going to be a blanket effect, but it's going to be cheaper. So they're not perfectly linear. but they're pretty close to. And you start picking and choosing, putting some of these things together. I think you can come up with a good marketing campaign. But
Yeah.
again, it's based off of what you need.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you explained it perfectly. I don't even need to say anything. But in terms of, I mean, there's so many different ideas or suggestions in terms of like, well, do I need all of these elements of marketing to do this? Do I just, is there just one magic bullet that I can just take and like that's it? Like, what is your
Well,
opinion?
let's backtrack a little bit and let's talk about the beginning of the marketing proposition, which is opportunity. And I don't think a lot of people understand their opportunity. If somebody comes to me and says, "Ryan, I need more cars and I need to spend more money on marketing." The first thing I'm going to say is, "How's your call conversion?" So one of the things that we want to look at is a tool that both you and I are both very familiar with is CallRail.
Mhm.
We basically track all of our media that we put out there. So our website, the Google, your Google business profile, any other advertisements or anything you have out there. We want to track all of the calls coming into our store for that month. Then the first thing I'm going to do is compare that to what my car count was. I would expect my people, usually the months that we do the best are months that we're able to convert about 70% of our calls into cars.
Mhm.
So if I see that we're only converting about half of our calls, I'm listening to calls. I'm trying to see where we went wrong. What are we doing to get them over the curb, to get them in the door, to have the opportunity to service their vehicle? Are we telling them we're too busy and we can't get them in? What are we doing? And I wouldn't honestly send a marketing piece until I was approaching that 70% call conversion regularly, because it all starts with that initial phone call when somebody calls you, right?
Yep.
So marketing's tough because a lot of people just think I need more cars. They don't pay attention to how are they talking on the phone when that phone rings, right? Do
Yep.
you run a script? What do you do? Are your people trained? I mean, it matters.
Mhm.
So, we look at that. We look at what our opportunity is, and then we see what our car count is, and then we look at basically like the inspection, and we see what our opportunity is, and that gives us an idea of where we should be. Then once we get into that, we need to decide, what the goal is, how many calls, we would like to have a number of how many cars that we need. And then you've got to figure that out. So, on average, we'll say that mailers, you're going to get maybe a half of 1% return on a mailer. That's generally accepted as a decent return on mail. So, point being here is, we need to know how many cars that we need to get. So a lot of people would look at like a mailer, for example, and you'd say, one half of 1% is considered a decent return on mailers. So for every 1,000 mailers you send, you might get 5 cars from that. And a lot of people say mail doesn't work. Okay, well, look, if you look at the cost by what your average ticket could possibly be, and honestly, I don't really look at mail as an idea that I'm going to like get a bunch of people in here and fix all of their cars. Direct mail is an opportunity for me to collect customers. I want that person to become a customer for life, and then you'll get all to repair their cars and do all that kind of stuff. So I think that that's a big part of it. So there's a lot of different things that go in there. What's the silver bullet? If you're in a rural area, mailers are going to work a little bit better than Google Ads are going to work. If you're in an urban area, you might be more heavily leveraged in Google Ads versus mailers. So there's a lot of different things that work there. As generations change, I mean, about this, we had Facebook and then we moved on to Instagram and now you're on to TikTok. And it's like all these different medias that come about. A lot of them have different advertising platforms that you can utilize, but they're oftentimes based with different generations. So there's going to be a lot to navigate moving forward, a lot that changes. But the silver bullet, I mean, your guess is as good as mine. We're heavily invested in mailers. We do a lot of work with Google Ads. I think SEO is a huge part of it. I think Google My Business page, a lot of those things are floating too. So you really kind of, SEO is not a set it and forget it. There's a lot of website companies out there now that they'll build you a pretty basic website, and for the most part, it doesn't work too terrible bad. But there's just the bigger you get, I can tell you, the more dialed in approach you have to have.
We're chatting a little bit about here isn't any particular magic bullet. There's obviously a bunch of different things that need to be done where you're based out of obviously is going to weigh heavily
Oh
on
yeah.
what you can do, but you need to be able to understand that and know like, well, okay, well, I feel like people will say, well, I spent mailers for a month and it didn't work, so I feel like it was a waste of money. Or I tried Google Ads and I did it for a couple of months and I didn't get anything out of it. Like
Well,
to
hey, I mean, you gotta have realistic expectations, and I'm a math guy. I mean, I've always enjoyed engineering. I've always enjoyed math, that kind of stuff. And so for me, anytime I have a problem, we're going to do the math on it. Whether we're deciding to go into a new location, whether we're deciding to market, whether we're deciding to add another tech, to add another advisor, we're going to simply sit here and we're just going to map all of the math out and see how it looks with or without, and what we need to do to basically be able to supplement. And a lot of times you're talking about adding cars. So let me ask you, what do you feel like the basis of somebody coming to you and saying, hey, my Google Ads isn't working, or I'm not getting the ROI I feel like I should be on my website. I mean, what's the first thing you're going to look into?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, I mean, first off, a lot of people within their Google Ads don't have conversion tracking, so that there's no real true mechanism to understand how many phone calls they're getting from Google Ads. That's a big problem in and of itself. So if you don't understand how many calls you're getting, there's no real effective way to understand how well it's working. Because even if you've trained your people at the front desk to be like, hey, make sure you're asking every single time where they've heard about us. They'll just say Google. They're not going to say, oh, I searched this exact thing on Google, or I typed this in Google Ad. Like you're not going to get that delineation. So then you need
Sure.
to have the right tracking to understand
Well,
that.
to your point, just with that specifically, and why I love that is because Campbell's Soup did a study. It's been a handful of years ago now, but they did a study, and they basically asked people, "Where's the last place that you saw Campbell's Soup at?" And people said basically on TV or in the supermarket. And what you found is they hadn't had a Campbell's Soup ad in years.
Mm.
Right. So people were thinking like they don't realize like, hey, they don't realize where the marketing's come from. They just try to figure out, well, I think it was here, or I think it was there. So it's very hard to get, it's very hard to get true data from just simply asking somebody something. You really like to have something that understands clicks. So I get your point there.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so, granted, we do have to like trust what the customer says. So, I mean, what they believe is where they found you. I mean, that could very well be the right place that you need to advertise and market, regardless of if, hey, they saw your post on social media that led them to typing in your name in Google, and then from there they read the reviews and they had a few good reviews, and so then they give you a call. And then when
Right.
they said, hey, how do we find you? Oh, I just read some Google reviews. Like obviously there was a life path to that, but again, that's what's sticking out to them. And so that shows, okay, maybe that's where I need to invest more of my dollars because that's what's sticking in their mind of where they are coming from. But without the proper tracking, if you don't have different numbers and understanding of where things are coming from, again, it will feel like you're throwing money in the wind. And then when months are good, you feel like ROI is good. And then when months are bad, you feel like ROI is bad. But that is definitely not the correlation that should be happening there.
What's the number on Google Ads that you would probably want to pay closest attention to?
Yeah, so it's going to be the cost per conversion rather. So like there's a lot of focus on cost per click. Obviously, cost per click is important. I mean, how many times someone clicking on an ad that then is costing you dollars to get them there.
Well, your market's going to set that because if
But
you're in a highly competitive market, you're probably going to have a higher cost per click, right?
exactly. And so from there, we want to properly understand then cost per conversion and then and knowing, okay, well, of these clicks that led to preferably a landing page because that's a little bit easier to track because you can create separate numbers and different campaigns around different landing pages. But then from there, you want to know, okay, how many times they went to the landing page, how many then resulted in a phone call or a form fill out that you have on there. That's as dry data as you need, and then knowing that
I
cost.
think that's an extremely important piece that I think a lot of people don't understand because most people pay for their Facebook ads to be done, or they pay for their Google ads to be done for them. And that's great. But I think probably, correct me if I'm wrong here, but in my opinion, the most important question that somebody needs to ask is, where does this link go to? Because myself as a consumer, if I'm interested in your business and I Google getting my brakes done, I probably have an idea in my head that I need to get my brakes repaired. And I don't want to go to a landing page on your website that tells me all about brakes. After all, I'm not the person fixing them. You're the person I'm looking to pay to fix them. So I think a lot of people I think there's a lot of people that are really great at making tremendous Facebook ads. There's a lot of people who are great at making tremendous Google ads, but being sexy on the front end doesn't make you any money on the back end. And all of the conversion comes from the back end, which would be a landing page or a form or something for somebody to fill out that gets that information to the shop. Scheduling an appointment, simply put. I mean, or if prompting them to call, that's how you convert. You don't convert them by sending them to a information page.
Yeah, no, exactly. And because you already paid for them to get there. Once they get there, you want them to call and just make a quick decision there. Because more than likely, if they're clicking on the ad, they didn't scroll by and look at the reviews on the maps or scroll down and look at the websites. They have something that's urgently wrong. So there's this a lot higher buyer intent behind someone that clicking on an ad. Typically, obviously, there's people that are just lazy and just will click on things, and you can capture them too. But typically, if someone's clicking on the ad, a lot higher buyer intent behind it. So from there, you want it very easy to call. Here's my information. When can I come in? And again, like you mentioned, you want your team ready to be able to take them in today or at the very least tomorrow. Like you don't want it to be, oh, I'm so glad that you found our ad and you guys look like a great choice, but we're free in 3 weeks. It's like, well, that doesn't help me. I can't not have a car for 3 weeks. So
Sure.
that's where you want to make sure, again, back to your processes in-house, that you're prepared for that marketing dollars you're investing in.
Yeah, I mean, saying yes is a double-edged sword. I mean, you have to say yes, we can get you in, and then also you have to be able to get that car repaired in a timely manner. It's not just drop it off and we'll get to it when we get to it. Like, yes, we have space in our parking lot for you to park your vehicle for us to get to it at our leisure. That's not saying yes. And I think that there's an idea in our industry where people have to qualify customers and do all this other kind of stuff. Great. I mean, whatever your business model is, that's up to you. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat, I always say.
Mm.
Um, but there's something to be said for volume, and collecting customers is an extremely important part of sustainability in business. We're going through a period of time right now where car count is honestly, I mean, it is down. It's been down for the past almost year and a half, 2 years,
Mhm.
and but revenue's up. A big part of the reason why revenue's up is because parts are more expensive. And you really can't look at revenue specifically as an indicator. You have to look at gross profit and effectively net profit.
Yep.
Gross profit may be up, but also are your costs up? Are your costs for marketing? Are your costs for, all of your other overhead expenses, are they up? I mean, net profit is always going to be the king indicator on how well and how healthy your business is. But people are kind of getting obsessed with having record months year
Yeah.
over year and everything's going up. And you look at car count, and car count's the same, or maybe they're in a position where they were still able to grow. But you start getting into some of these higher car count shops, 500, 600 cars, they're not seeing as many cars as they were sometimes. They're actually starting to see in the 400s, maybe low 500s.
Mhm.
And but revenue again is up because ARO is up because parts are up. Honestly, labor's up. I mean, a lot of people have raised their labor rates over the course of the year. So understanding that the reasons why your numbers are better, not just because it may be because we got lucky or we're better at everything that we do. Like there's plenty of reasons out there that we have to take into consideration why numbers are better. And, we do all these things to try to help us get through bad times. And if we're going to go through a low car count period, we would hope that we've done a good enough job for the customers that you realize that 20% of your customers are 80% of your business. I don't think a lot of people realize that too. Your top 20% of your customers basically pay for 80% of the repairs that you perform.
Yep.
So you've always got to have marketing come in and be able to replace customers that you're losing. We say that a 70-30 split, 70% return, 30% new is a good split.
Mhm.
But you're always going to lose customers to retirement, kids going out on their own, moving away, people moving away, all these different reasons, death. And are you replacing that customer base with new customers? If you're $100,000 a month shop, I mean, you don't need a lot of new customers to be able to replace the ones that are going away. Right. But if you're a $200,000-$300,000 a month shop and you're maintaining, 9-10 technicians, 3-4 front counter people, you've got to have pretty heavy marketing. I mean, the ante grows. I mean, it's just scalable all the way up. And yeah, if you're a 4 bay, 5 bay shop, it doesn't take a whole lot of cars to keep you busy. But if you're a 10 to 16 bay shop, you need a lot of cars to be able to
Mm.
keep yourself busy. It's just there's so many different scenarios that go into this.
Yeah.
I mean, I run my goal is basically um, lower car count, increase ARO per technician, increase car count, maintain ARO per shop.
Mm.
So there's an idea out there that you should lower your car count and increase your ARO. And I think anybody intentionally doing that is a madman. Um, why would you like, yeah, I don't like that idea. But that idea per technician is great. 60
Mm.
cars per month per tech is a really nice sweet spot for us. It allows them to get their inspections done and get their work done appropriately,
Mm.
and still turn quite a bit of hours. Otherwise, we still want to try to move as many cars through the store as we can. And if we look at it on a per technician basis, we can add cars and add people to work on those cars rather than add a bunch of cars. And then the sacrifice becomes tech quote and ARO when you add a ton of cars. So there's a sweet spot in the shop that we have to pay attention to. But that's also a refinement phase. If you're in a growth phase, the only thing you should be worrying about doing is getting cars and saying yes and being able to get their cars through the shop. I mean, that's absolutely true.
Yep.
Don't try to refine and grow at the same time. It doesn't usually work out too well.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I'm going to backtrack real quick. I just, in terms of you mentioning gross profit, net profit, but we never got into like maybe what the goal percentage should be for your shop. Like, so what do you typically look at? What is your goal for those two numbers?
Well, I think a gross profit goal, depending on market, is going to be anywhere between low 50s and 60%.
Mm.
My shops generally run about a 56, 57% gross profit. And so, your net profit, you'd love to see over 20. 20 is usually an indicator of a very well-run shop. There's plenty of shops out there that are doing 5, 10% that are okay.
Yep.
It depends on your overhead. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, there's so many variables that go
Yeah.
into that. Um, Most of the time, yeah, there's so many variables that go into it. A well-run shop's going to be able to maintain, perhaps a 20% net profit, but there's plenty of big shops out there that do 15, 16% net profit, and they're just such a big monster. They would be very hard pressed to get to that 20% mark, but
Mm.
they're very well-run, efficient shops. They just have a very large, they just have a very large overhead expense. So not always fair to discount somebody based off of their net profit numbers, but I still maintain that this business is very easy to break even in and very hard to make a lot of money in. And this is why a lot of guys survive on nothing for years and years, and then oftentimes become very successful because they kind of figured it out.
Yep. No, for sure. And then in terms of then the marketing dollar percentage, like what percentage of revenue or percentage of any different number that you typically want to see and look at for a
I
shop?
think
Obviously, it depends on what phase they're in terms of
yeah,
like
if
staying consistent, being in growth mode. But here
you're gonna
you're
be in a
taking.
maintenance mode, I think you probably still have to spend about a minimum of 3% of your revenue dollars towards marketing. If you're in a growth mode, I think you would expect to be anywhere between 5 and 8%, depending on it all depends on location. I
Yep.
mean, and so you have a rent expense in there. I mean, rent plus marketing, we'll say 13% roughly
Mhm.
would be a good idea of what it would be. So if you have a very visual building on a high car count road, you may not have to spend as much money on marketing because you're right there. If you're off the beaten path, if you're in a industrial complex, you may have a very low rent. You may have to spend 8 to 10% of your money on marketing
Mhm.
just to be able to get people to find you to get out of your way. So, it's back and forth. Anybody, there's plenty of shops out there saying, we're not doing any marketing and that kind of stuff. I
Yep.
still think 3%. And again, what goes into marketing dollars? I mean, your website's going to be marketing. I mean, that's people finding you when they need you.
Mhm.
I think that there's a rate of return. I think that's important. I think somebody spending $500 a month on Google Ads is about wasting their money. Um, I think you got to spend. There's certain entry levels that you have to be at to be able to make money. I don't know that I would do Google Ads if you didn't have a budget of at least $1,000 a month. Um, but I think that there's an entry level you have to get into. Mailers are an easy one to get into just because you can send it out. It's always distance over dollars. So
Yep.
you want to own your backyard. So if you just wanted to start out sending mailers and you just wanted to make sure that everybody in a mile radius of your shop knew who you were, you probably could send out mailers to them for fairly cheap, a couple grand a month, maybe. And then you can always expand out from there. You can actually slowly grow. And here's the thing about mailers, you're doing a good job for people within a mile. They tell their friends that live in 2 miles and 3 miles. Word of mouth advertising is still always going to be the freest, cheapest, most effective advertising we have in our businesses, right? So you got to understand your marketing. There's tier two and tier three marketing practices that go on. That the tier one would be what you're directly doing, and tier two and tier three is basically kind of how you treat a customer and what they put into the market for you, becoming kind of your sales force. So a lot of things there, but 3% maintenance, 5 to 8% growth is usually a pretty good rule of thumb.
Yep. No, I love that. And even with the word of mouth that you mentioned, I know there's some people that are like, well, but my word of mouth carries it all for me. But well, it's like you can even market the word of mouth. And so there's a the little tactics you can do in terms of like get little video testimonials from your clients and things like that and advertise these testimonials, and it kind of gets word of mouth tenfold in terms of like putting it on steroids where you don't have to rely on these people to physically talk to their friends. You're having them talk to all their friends for them when you blast it on social media, things like that. So there's a lot of
Yep,
different ways you can still leverage that marketing dollar if word of mouth is kind of your true passion for what it is.
absolutely. And obviously there's networking groups,
Yeah.
BNIs, places like that. I mean, those are great. You kind of do have to if you're busy or if you're working in the shop rather than on the shop, you kind of have to give some consideration to your time investment in a
Mm.
lot of those types of groups. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can get word of mouth advertising out there. But again, going back to it all starts with what does the market want from you? How do you figure that out? Well, you figure out how many cars you have in a month. You take that against your car count, and you can figure what the market wants from you. There's probably, I bet you there is a buttload of shops out there who are not privy to the marketing world whatsoever, that if they understood how many calls that they get and decline, either don't answer the phone because they only got one person running the counter or they're in the back or whatever it may end up being, they don't answer the phone, and they go through a slow period and they're going, "Oh, I don't know why it's slow, it just gets like this, we're normally booked out 3 weeks." Well, the opportunity was completely missed, and they didn't answer the phone in all of those other months, and those people went somebody else somewhere else, and now they're somebody else's customer,
Yeah.
right? Answering the phone is the number one thing that you can do well to make sure that you're not slow ever. Just answer the phone. It's just that simple. It's crazy how basic some of these things are to companies that they don't even realize they're not doing. I mean, it's a little bit of a lack of personal self-awareness, but yeah, there's so many little things you can do just for nothing
Yep.
that'll get you going.
Well, and even within, I mean, not many people know, but within Google, if Google starts seeing that you're missing too many calls when they click on that call button, then you start getting seen as not trustworthy in Google's eyes. And Google's a business at the end of the day. They want to show trustworthy results. If you're not trustworthy, you're not going to rank. And if you're not ranking, you're not getting any calls. So it kind of all snowballs together in a sense. So just you pick up your phone, answer it always, and get them in. That just figure out, like, again, if you're not having the bandwidth to do it, hire, bring someone on, then
Mhm.
just keep kind of rolling from there.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Ryan, I really appreciate your time today. We talked a lot of
They're
important
all over the
things,
place. It's good.
but I think it was very valuable regardless. I hope everyone kind of still stayed on throughout this podcast here today. But Ryan, for those before you leave, I'd love to give like one tip in terms of for owners. So like one thing that maybe they can improve to be a leader, or they can improve communication wise, or their marketing. Like what would be your one go-to tip for them?
Sure. I think that the biggest thing that I think we all have to understand is that the day that you stop your personal growth journey is oftentimes the day that you begin to die effectively.
Mm.
I always say if you're not growing, you're dying, and that's extremely true. And within business, we have to give consideration to interest rates, inflation rates, as far as what our company growth looks like. But when we stay stagnant, usually we stop growing too. And I think the biggest failure in organizations is when somebody asks you why you do something, and the answer is we've always done it that way.
Hmm.
That's what the Kodaks and the Motorola's and the Nokias and the Blackberries of the world said. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity that these companies had. The AOLs, like all these people had the opportunities to be the Google, to be the Yahoo for a period of time, right? And if you look back over history and you see that it was just the "nah, I'm good" idea. This killed billion-dollar corporations. What's it going to do to a $1 million entity, right? And a lot of young people want to learn, they want to grow, and a lot of these young people that come into our shops, they want to be mentored by somebody who they perceive has more experience than them. They want to be part of a vision. They want to be part of something. A lot of millennials getting out of college, and now even the Zennials, the first thing they want to do is get a job with a large corporation because they want that clout on their resume. So
Yes.
everybody wants to be a part of something. So if you're not growing and you're not working towards, keeping up with, what the market wants, it's not new technologies, not the bleeding edge, but the leading edge, actually just becoming a better person, figuring out how to mentor different generations, how to grow your business. I think that you're in a bad spot. And I would invite those people just to become open-minded, figure out ways to become more open-minded, and just really honestly stay curious. I mean, I think curiosity is probably one of the biggest attributes to people being successful. Is when you just don't understand something, go learn about it, even if it's just a brief. Headway is a great app. If you don't want to read books, Headway is a
Mm.
tremendous app. It's about 15 minutes, condensed books. Most of the great stuff that everybody's going to recommend for you to read is
Yep.
on there, and you're going to get the Cliff's Notes version of all these little bitty lessons. Twitter's a great place for me to get little lessons from finance and all the different kind of things. So any place that I can go to get basically consumable, digestible, quick lessons that I can take in without having to read a 100-page book or something like that. I think that that's the biggest stuff you can grow, and you can do. And in your growth journey, just basically continue to stay curious and try to get better. Be a better husband, be a better father, be a better son, be a better daughter, be a better wife, brother, sister, whatever it may end up being. Just be a better person. Try to put into the world. Last thing I'll say here, and this gets a little bit deep, but I believe the definition of hell is the day that you die, the person you could have become meets the person you did become. And you want to know how big that gap is. So I
Mhm.
think that we all have this extreme amount of capacity, whether we realize it or not, to grow and learn. And the day we stop growing and learning is usually the day that we kind of start our death spiral, for lack of a better term. So just continue to be curious, continue to learn. And, if you don't understand something, go figure it out. Find somebody that will teach it to you.
For sure. Definitely find someone. Well, I really appreciate this, Ryan. For those that maybe have questions or want to reach out to you after, what is the best way that they can reach out to you?
Yeah, if anybody would have questions or concerns, you can reach me by email. My email is ryan.h at shopfixacademy.com. And if nothing else, send me a friend invite on Facebook, and we can chat it up in the messenger. So,
For sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you for the listeners that are still here with us. Click subscribe, click the like button, do all the things that we need you to do. But again, we'll talk to you guys again next time. See ya.
bye.
Bye.